Welcome to another episode of the Southwest Desert. Today, we're diving into the fascinating tale of the lost mines of the Peraltas, a story of gold, greed, and deadly conflict in the rugged Superstition Mountains of Arizona. Our story begins in 1846, when the silver mines owned by the noble Peralta family in Chihuahua, Mexico, were nearing exhaustion after 2 generations of providing a comfortable living. Miguel Peralta had just returned from exploring the headwaters of the Rio Salado with an idea to restore the family fortunes, find gold in the virgin wilderness drained by the river. Miguel gave his eager sons, Pedro, Ramon, and Manuel, some sage prospecting advice: follow the river until they found placer gold, then trace it back to the source. And so the brothers set off with a small band of retainers on an arduous journey down the ever-widening Salt River. For endless weeks they traveled through high-walled gorges and past boulder-choked rapids, testing for gold at tributary junctions and natural gold traps in the riverbed. They pressed on relentlessly toward the distant horizon, until one fateful day they rounded a bend to find a verdant valley where Labarge Creek tumbled down from the jagged Superstition Mountains. It was here, at the junction of the creek and river, that they struck gold, literally. Their pans revealed a treasure trove of bright yellow flakes, washed down from some fantastically rich source high up in the mountains. With shouts of excitement, the brothers' long trek came to a sudden halt. Thank you for joining your desert frontiersman Alan for another lost gold tale. Please leave a like or comment. For further desert adventures, hit the subscribe button. As provisions were running low, eldest brother Pedro decided to split up their forces. He left Ramon and Manuel to set up camp and build 2 arrastras, ore crushing mills, while he headed up into the mountains to find the source of the gold. Pedro climbed higher and higher, following Labarge Creek up into Boulder Creek, then Needle Canyon, penetrating deep into the heart of the Apache's sacred Thunder God Mountains. Within a mile or 2 north of a towering hat-shaped peak he named La Sombrera, Pedro began prospecting in earnest as the placer trail thinned out. His explorations took him up steep tributary canyons and atop the high plateau of Bluff Springs Mountain, where he left narrow crosscuts on several quartz veins as proof of his presence. But it was on the slopes of a black-topped mountain about 1.5 miles north of La Sombrera that Pedro hit the mother lode: 4 rich outcrops of gold-bearing quartz. Excited weeks flew by as Pedro worked these bonanzas, but soon provisions ran low and the mules were loaded to capacity with golden ore. Before heading back down, Pedro created a key marker by driving stones into a giant saguaro cactus in Needle Canyon below. From this distinctive landmark on a rocky ridge, he made a triangulation map showing both the fabulous mountain to the west and La Sombrera to the south. When Pedro returned to the river, he found his brothers impatiently awaiting him, worried about increasing Apache presence in the area. Ramon and Manuel wanted to leave with the fortune they'd already accumulated from the placer deposits, but Pedro laughed off their fears. He was captivated by the thrill of the hunt and the seemingly inexhaustible gold. The brothers parted ways, with Ramon and Manuel heading south to establish a cattle ranch, each taking a copy of Pedro's map. Little did they know these maps would become bright threads in the tapestry of golden disaster the Apache thunder gods were weaving. Pedro returned to Chihuahua City to organize a larger expedition. In the winter of 1847-48, he came back to the Superstitions with 68 men and 200 mules, ready to exploit his golden discovery. But no sooner had they arrived at the river than Apache warriors began to appear. The rugged landscape of deep canyons and countless arroyos provided perfect cover for the silent Apaches to come and go like furtive phantoms. Occasionally, a luckless miner would be struck down by arrows that seemed to come from nowhere, A prudent military leader would have recognized the signs of impending disaster and kept his men together. But Pedro was a miner, driven by gold fever and the reckless urge to search for more. He divided his forces, leaving some men at the Arrastras while splitting the rest into mining and prospecting parties scattered across several square miles around the black-topped mountain. His strategy paid off initially, as the prospectors quickly discovered 3 more potential bonanzas in Needle Canyon and another in LaBarge Canyon. Feverish activity ensued as the miners established camps, built a stone hut for Pedro at the foot of La Sombrera, dug charcoal pits to temper their tools, felled trees for mine timbers, and sank shafts deeper into the gold-speckled ore. For many months, the profitable business of mining continued as mule trains hauled ore to the Arrastras. But as summer waned, the Apaches began to attack in earnest. Bands of warriors grew larger, forcing Pedro to assign more men to guard duty. Unknown to the miners, Apache chieftains were massing hundreds of braves north of the river, preparing to destroy the invaders who dared to violate their sacred mountains. Pedro's first warning came on a fateful September day when a dying scout staggered into camp with news of a massacre at the Arrastras. Other scouts rushed in to report that hordes of fierce warriors had surrounded them on all sides but the west. Pedro immediately ordered the mules loaded with as much golden concentrate as they could carry, while he personally buried the remainder on the hill he had mapped, carving Spanish miners' signs into solid rock to mark its location. The miners fled westward in frenzied haste, straight into a trap. Apaches were waiting everywhere, hideously painted warriors on bare-backed ponies, screaming and killing in a bloodthirsty frenzy. They drove the miners back against the mountain cliffs near present-day Goldfield, where a deadly hail of arrows and lances fell upon them. After scalping their victims and looting the pack train, the Apaches unknowingly left behind the greatest treasure, the golden concentrates they mistook for worthless yellow dirt and dumped on the ground. Years later, in 1914, 2 prospectors would find $18,000 worth of gold amid the massacre debris. With the invaders destroyed to the last man, Apache medicine men held council to address the sacrilege committed in their sacred domain. They feared the mine shafts and exposed gold-flecked rock would draw more invaders, potentially angering the thunder gods. So they dispatched a band of 30 squaws and 2 youths to obliterate all traces of the mining activity. For a full moon, this work party labored in the mountains, throwing ore and abandoned tools back into the shafts. They covered the mines with stout logs, then a layer of natural caliche cement that hardens like rock, and finally dirt and surface rocks to match the surroundings. But in their zeal, they left one mine open, a shallow pit they thought too well hidden to ever be found again. This overlooked bonanza would later become known as the legendary Lost Dutchman Mine. The story of the Peralta mines doesn't end there, of course. Over the years, tantalizing clues and artifacts have surfaced to fuel continued searches for the lost gold. In 1901, a local cowboy stumbled upon $35,000 worth of golden concentrates amid a heap of Spanish-shod mule bones atop the black-topped mountain, presumably part of Pedro's last-ditch effort to salvage his treasure. The legend of the Peralta mines has become inextricably linked with that of the Lost Dutchman mine, named after German immigrant Jacob Waltz, who allegedly rediscovered one of the rich veins in the 1870s. Waltz went to his grave in 1891 without revealing the mine's exact location, but not before supposedly giving clues to Julia Thomas, who cared for him in his final days. These clues, along with the Peralta family maps and stone tablets allegedly carved by Spanish miners, have sent generations of treasure hunters into the unforgiving Superstition Mountains. Many have lost their lives in the pursuit, leading some to believe the Apache curse still lingers over the land. As we conclude our tale of the lost mines of the Peraltas, it's worth reflecting on the enduring power of gold to capture the human imagination. The Peralta brothers' discovery sparked a chain of events that would leave an indelible mark on the history and folklore of the American Southwest. Their story reminds us of the fine line between ambition and recklessness, and the often tragic consequences when cultures clash over resources. This has been the Southwest Desert. Join us next time as we delve into another captivating tale from the annals of Southwest frontier history. Until then, keep your eyes on the horizon and your dreams as big as the open sky. Please leave a like or comment. Hit the subscribe button for more desert romps.